Have you ever said yes, while every cell in your body was screaming no? Then, at night, you lie awake, regretting that word, wondering why it was so hard to refuse. You are not alone. Psychologists call this fawning, a survival response as old as fear itself. Today, we are going to unpack a skill that was never taught in school, yet shapes the quality of your life more than any exam score. That skill is saying no, not as an act of selfishness, but as a form of self-protection backed by science. According to psychologist Susan Newman's research, outlined in her book The Book of No, most people agree to do things not because they want to, but because they fear the social consequences of refusal. That fear is deeply wired into our nervous system, a legacy from a time when being excluded from the group could mean death. This video will guide you through understanding the psychological roots of struggling to say no, its impact on mental health, and most importantly, how to build healthy boundaries without guilt. We will draw on research from Daniel Kahneman, frameworks from James Clear, and Carl Jung's thinking on authenticity. Evolutionarily, humans are group creatures. Psychologist Pete Walker explains that beyond fight, flight, or freeze, there is a fourth, rarely discussed response called fawn, or people-pleasing to avoid conflict. Our brain treats social rejection as though it were as dangerous as a physical threat. Imagine Sarah, a marketing manager in London. Every time her boss requests sudden overtime, she always agrees, even when her weekend is already full of plans. Not because she lacks priorities, but because the fear of being seen as uncooperative outweighs her own needs. Social psychology research by Vanessa Bohns and colleagues reveals an interesting pattern. People tend to significantly underestimate how understanding others will be about a refusal. We imagine social consequences far worse than reality. That imagined fear is what keeps us saying yes. Psychologist Roy Baumeister, through his theory of ego depletion, explains that every decision we make, including the decision to agree to something we don't actually want, drains our mental energy reserves. The more often we force ourselves to say yes, the faster that reserve runs out. This depletion doesn't just make us tired, it also triggers what psychologists call resentment, a buried bitterness toward the person we helped, and even toward ourselves. Ironically, forced kindness can end up damaging the very relationships we were trying to protect. A body of research on workload and mental health, published across various clinical psychology journals, consistently links the inability to set boundaries with higher levels of anxiety and burnout symptoms. Weak boundaries are not just about time, they are about an identity slowly being eroded. In the classic book Boundaries, psychologists Henry Cloud and John Townsend explain that healthy boundaries define where you end and another person begins. Without them, we lose the ability to distinguish our own responsibilities from those of others. Imagine a friend, let's call him Michael, a freelance designer in Toronto. For years he accepted every project offered to him, afraid of losing clients. When he finally started declining projects that didn't align with his values, his remaining clients respected him even more, not less. Michael's story reflects what interpersonal relationship researchers often find. People with clear boundaries tend to be seen as more trustworthy. Because when you say yes, others know it's genuine, not just fear disguised as kindness. The author of Atomic Habits, James Clear, teaches the concept of identity-based decisions, making choices based on who you want to become, rather than the pressure of the moment. Before answering a request, ask yourself, does this align with the person I am trying to become? Try this simple technique. Give yourself a 24-hour pause before answering a major request. Say, I need to think about it first. This pause interrupts the automatic fear response and creates space for your values to speak louder than your anxiety. Psychologist Carl Jung distinguished between the persona, the social mask we wear to be accepted, and the true self beneath it. He believes psychological health comes from the process of individuation, the courage to live aligned with your true self, rather than merely the mask others prefer. Every time you say no honestly, you are shedding a piece of that mask and moving closer to your most whole self. This isn't a comfortable process, but according to Jung, it is precisely the uncomfortable process that brings true growth. Let's summarize our journey today. We have learned that the fear of refusing stems from an ancient survival response, that excessive yes-saying erodes our energy and identity, and that healthy boundaries actually strengthen, rather than damage, our relationships. Saying no is not an act of closing a door. It is an act of opening space for you to breathe, grow, and become your most honest self. The core message is simple: you cannot pour from an empty cup. If this video opened your eyes, hit subscribe so you don't miss other life lessons never taught in school. Tell me in the comments, what kind of request is hardest for you to refuse? Next week, we will explore how to recognize guilt-tripping manipulation and how to protect yourself from it.